I wasn't supposed to be on that flight. That day, Flight 708 from Calgary to Montreal had been overbooked, and my name was missing from the manifest. Only because a last-minute cancellation opened up seat 21A did I even board. The snow was falling sideways, heavy winds howling across the runway, yet the ground crew moved like everything was normal. Normal! That word would haunt me. I had flown dozens of times before, but the atmosphere at the gate felt tense, like something was pressing against the air itself. I watched a man in a brown suit argue with the gate agent in hushed tones. The agent smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I should have noticed it then, the script already unraveling. They say hindsight is 20/20, but when you're about to become part of a story no one will believe, every missed detail becomes a scream in your memory. I sat next to a woman who kept checking her phone obsessively. She had that frantic energy, like she knew something was about to happen. Across the aisle, a teenager live-streamed the takeoff, laughing nervously to his followers. "Heading to Montreal, guys? Let's see if we survive this blizzard," he joked. God, if he only knew. The flight attendants gave their safety demonstration with blank faces, polite, robotic, the way people act when they're just trying to make it through the day. When the engines roared and we started climbing, I felt a sharp pressure in my ears, more intense than I'd ever felt. And right then, something shifted. I don't mean the plane, I mean in me. A sensation I still don't have the words for. Something unnatural. A silence inside the sound. 28 minutes into the flight, turbulence hit. Not like bumps, like fists. It tossed the plane so violently that oxygen masks dropped, and a man behind me threw up instantly. People screamed, but the flight crew stayed silent. Too silent. The captain didn't come on the intercom. That's when I knew something was wrong. The woman beside me gripped her phone and whispered, "They're not talking to us." Her voice was pure fear. And then she said something I'll never forget. "My cousin works in air traffic. She told me yesterday a warning was issued about this corridor. Something about tower interference." I asked her what she meant, but she shook her head. "They told her not to say anything. She deleted the message." That phrase, "deleted the message," started the unraveling. My brain catalogued it. Why would anyone delete a warning before a flight? Unless, at 1:43 p.m. the right engine failed. We heard it, a hard, grinding stall, and the plane lurched to one side. Still no announcement, still no captain. Then came the second shock. The smell of burning plastic and the crackle of the overhead speaker broken by static. A voice, scrambled and clipped, tried to speak, but all we heard were fragments. No protocol. Repeat. Jamming. The flight attendants scrambled like puppets cut from their strings. One dropped to her knees in the aisle, praying aloud. Passengers began recording. I remember looking out the window and seeing nothing but white and a strange, flickering glow behind the clouds. Was it lightning? It didn't flash like lightning. It pulsed, rhythmic, deliberate, almost like signals. I didn't understand it then, but now I can't unsee it. I think we weren't alone in that sky. People ask what goes through your mind when you think you're going to die. For me, it was stupid things. Did I lock my front door? Would my sister know I forgave her? But in the middle of that chaos, something else clicked. I remembered a podcast I heard 2 weeks earlier about flight control sabotage during the Cold War. They talked about how interference with tower frequencies could force a plane into dead zones. I didn't believe it then, but now I kept wondering, why weren't we being guided by the tower? Why weren't they helping us? We'd entered Canadian airspace. Where were the alerts? Then I saw something that confirmed my worst fear. A man in first class stood up, yelling that his phone was wiped mid-flight. "All messages gone!" he screamed. "My call log erased!" That was when the panic truly began. I don't know how long I sat frozen, maybe seconds, maybe years. The smell of melted wires was getting stronger, seeping through the air vents like a warning we were supposed to ignore. I looked at the flight attendant again, the one who had been praying. She was now staring at the cockpit door, her mouth open as if she'd seen a ghost. I followed her gaze, and that's when I noticed the door was slightly ajar. That never happens mid-flight, ever. My heart stopped. A passenger, a tall guy in his 30s, stood slowly unbuckled and walked toward it like he was sleepwalking. No one stopped him. No one told him to sit. And when he pushed the door fully open, we saw the impossible. There was no one in the cockpit. The pilot and co-pilot were gone. There was no time to process it. The man shouted something I couldn't hear, then stumbled backward. The flight attendant ran up, slammed the door shut, and locked it. She turned to us, shaking her head violently, tears streaming down her cheeks. "They were there 10 minutes ago," she whispered to herself, as if trying to make sense of it. I grabbed her arm. "Where did they go?" I demanded. She just looked at me and said the 3 words that still echo in my dreams. They weren't alone. That broke the silence. Passengers began screaming, shouting questions, pushing toward the front. The teenager with the live stream was crying now, begging someone to take the controls, but there was no one to do it. We were 36,000 feet in the air, and no one was flying the plane. Then, the lights flickered, and the speaker above our heads crackled again. This time the static was broken by something different, not a voice, but a noise, metallic, distorted, like reversed speech or machine language. Several passengers covered their ears. I swear I heard a woman whisper, "This is how it ends," over and over. Then came a sound I'll never forget, a second tone layered beneath the static. It was steady, rhythmic, and it triggered something in me. My body went cold. I recognized it. I'd heard it once in a YouTube video about declassified Canadian surveillance towers. The tone was used to ping satellite relays when testing signal scramblers. Why was that sound inside our cabin? The woman beside me, the one who'd mentioned the tower interference, dug into her purse and pulled out a small USB recorder. "I've been tracking flight frequencies for weeks," she said. "This tone, it's encrypted. They use it to override communication protocols." She was trembling, but her eyes were sharp. "They've hijacked the entire signal network. That's why there's no black box feedback. That's why no one's responding. We're flying blind." Someone behind us shouted that the screens in first class were all frozen. "No GPS, no altitude, nothing," someone yelled. A man tried using his satellite phone. Dead. Another man smashed the panel above his seat in rage. I heard the thump of fists on plastic, the panic growing like a virus. Then came the voice. Not the captain, not the co-pilot. A new voice. Calm, male, American accent, and too clear to be internal. "Attention passengers of Flight 708. Remain calm. Your flight has entered a restricted corridor. Do not attempt to communicate externally. Do not interfere with the crew. This is a containment protocol." That word, containment, rattled something loose inside all of us. The woman with the recorder started shaking her head violently. "That's not a standard code. That's black level. That's classified." People began shouting questions. "What the hell is a restricted corridor? Who is this? Where's the pilot?" But the voice didn't return. At this point, several passengers gathered at the front. One of them, a former army mechanic named Theo, took the lead. "I've flown cargo for years," he said. "If we don't figure out how to stabilize the plane, we're going down." He coordinated with a flight attendant who, through tears, admitted she didn't know the code to unlock the cockpit override. "It was changed this morning," she whispered. "We weren't told why." Theo swore under his breath, then asked if anyone had flying experience. A young man from row 26 raised his hand. He'd flown 2 years of simulation training in university. "Better than nothing," Theo said. They moved together toward the emergency controls. Just as they reached the door, the entire cabin went dark. Emergency lights flickered on a few seconds later, casting everything in red. The woman beside me played back her recording, only static. "They're wiping signals in real time," she whispered. "They're erasing every trace we were even up here." That's when she told me her name, Madison Gray, and that she was a former systems analyst for a Canadian aerospace contractor. "I saw things," she said. "Towers being built where there were no airports, files with no names, only coordinates, and flights that weren't supposed to be flying." She looked me dead in the eye. "This flight is not on the official radar. We were never supposed to land." I didn't sleep. No one did. The lights remained red, casting everything in that horror movie hue. Somewhere near the front, a baby cried endlessly, and a man was praying in Arabic. Others sat frozen, stunned into silence. I turned to Madison. "If we weren't on radar, what does that mean?" She looked at me, then at the recorder in her hand, and said something that chilled me to the bone. "It means this flight was ghosted before it took off, and someone on board was never supposed to make it to Montreal." That idea, someone being marked for disappearance, made the panic in my chest swell. Madison opened her laptop, pulling up a program I didn't recognize. "This is a real-time aviation monitor, pulled from satellite data," she said. "Flight 708 doesn't exist. There's no trace of us in any civilian channel." I asked her if it was a glitch. She shook her head. "It's not a glitch. It's a cover-up. We tried to count how many people were actually on board. The passenger manifest showed 76 names. But based on our count, there were at least 89 passengers. 13 people weren't on the list. One of them, a man in a grey jacket with a military bearing, hadn't spoken a word the entire flight." Madison pointed him out. "I recognize him. That's Corporal John Reeds. He disappeared from the public registry in 2019 after being linked to an unauthorized Arctic radar site." I stared at the man. He was asleep, or pretending to be. The kind of sleep that looks too still, too perfect. I felt my stomach drop. "So why is he here?" I asked. Madison only replied, "To make sure someone else isn't." I looked around. Every face was a mystery now. Suddenly, a sharp metallic bang echoed from the back of the plane. A panel near the lavatories had burst open from the inside. A young man went to check, but backed away immediately, face pale. "There's a hatch with wires and I don't know what I saw. It's not standard." Madison and I rushed over. Inside the open panel was a strange device, smaller than a microwave, glowing faintly blue. She stared at it in horror. "This isn't part of commercial aircraft systems," she whispered. "This is a data siphon. A device like that could intercept and scrub flight records, black box logs, even GPS data, live." I felt like vomiting. "They're deleting everything while we're still flying." Madison nodded. "Not just deleting, rerouting. Someone on the ground is watching this in real time and deciding what to keep." I started to sweat. This wasn't just sabotage. This was a controlled erasure. Every second we remained airborne, we were being unwritten. Madison took photos, but her camera glitched, images blurred, timestamps corrupted. A passenger shouted from the front, "The door just unlocked." We all turned. The cockpit door, which had been locked and unmanned, now hung open. Theo and the trainee pilot sprinted toward it. A moment later, Theo called out, "There's someone in the pilot's seat!" We rushed forward. Inside, a woman sat still, hands on the controls, face illuminated by red light. Her headset was on, but she wasn't talking. Her name tag read, "Lieutenant Sloan." She looked up at us and spoke one sentence. "I was told to wait for altitude 27. Then she pressed a button on the console, and the plane began to descend. The descent was immediate, not sharp, but steady, deliberate. Everyone felt it. Heads turned, conversations stopped. The mechanical hum shifted pitch, and the cabin pressure changed just enough to notice. Lieutenant Sloan didn't blink. She kept her eyes forward, both hands on the yoke, as if in a trance. Theo tried asking her what she meant by altitude 27, but she didn't respond. I stepped forward. "Lieutenant Sloan, who gave that order?" She finally turned her head, slowly, and looked me in the eye. "We are being redirected to Echo Point. You'll see when we reach it, Madison gasped. Echo Point? That's not on civilian charts. Sloan nodded. It's not a civilian airstrip. The silence in the cockpit was suffocating. Then what is it? I asked. A decision, she said. Someone decided this was the best way to contain the breach. Contain. There it was again. That word. Like we were a virus. A threat. Lieutenant Sloan revealed that she had boarded last minute at a restricted gate, given sealed instructions, and told not to intervene unless the plane reached 27,000 feet after engine failure. They calculated our descent path, she said. They knew this would happen. Madison shook her head. Then this wasn't a malfunction. It was planned. They engineered this. Sloan didn't deny it. You weren't supposed to find the siphon. That device was planted to ensure no trace of today survived. I felt sick. So who are you really working for? Her reply was bone-chilling. For the people who win when stories disappear. Passengers began noticing the descent. Panic set in again. Someone yelled, "We're going down!" Theo got on the PA to calm everyone, assuring them it was controlled. But the truth was, none of us knew where Echo Point was or what would happen once we landed. Madison typed coordinates furiously into a laptop, trying to trace Echo Point. Nothing came up. No airport, no base, no civilian registry. Then she remembered something. Wait. My father worked NORAD in the 90s. He mentioned a facility deep in northern Ontario. They called it the Mirror Station, because it only appeared in mirrored frequencies. We used a signal inversion tool to trace hidden relays. At 52201N 80305W a ping appeared. Madison pointed. That's it, Echo Point. Sloan was guiding us toward a place that officially didn't exist. As we descended, the clouds gave way to something haunting, a clearing surrounded by dense forest, like a scar carved into the earth. In the center, a long, narrow strip of concrete. No runway lights, no control tower. Just a field that seemed too clean, too intentional. Lieutenant Sloan adjusted the angle and started final approach. The voice returned over the intercom, not hers, not from anyone on board. It said, "Welcome to Echo Point. Remain seated. External visibility is restricted." The windows began to frost over, not with ice, but with static, like old televisions losing signal. People screamed, others dropped their phones in disbelief. I couldn't see the ground anymore, only white noise. We landed without seeing where we touched down. The wheels screeched, the cabin shook, but it wasn't a crash. It was a controlled, silent arrival into the unknown. When we stopped, no one moved. Madison clutched my arm. "They're going to board us," she said, her voice thin with fear. Theo stood up, ready to defend us, but what came next, no one expected. The emergency exit light turned green. Not red, green. It was an invitation. Lieutenant Sloan stood, straightened her uniform and said, "Follow the markers. Do not speak. Do not separate." Then she opened the door and disappeared down the stairs. One by one, passengers rose, pulled by fear, confusion, and something deeper, submission to the surreal. Outside, the air was too quiet. No birds, no wind, just low-frequency hums we could feel in our chests. We walked in a line across the tarmac, past tall white domes half buried in snow, like weather radars or observatories. Guards in black uniforms flanked us. No insignia, no weapons, no faces, just visors. We were led into a massive metal hangar with smooth white walls and no visible cameras, yet I knew we were being watched. Inside, we were instructed to place all devices on a conveyor belt, phones, cameras, anything with memory. Madison refused. A guard stepped forward, but instead of taking it, he held out a small device. "Sanitize it," he said. Madison pressed a button, and her screen went dark, her entire hard drive gone in 1 second. They separated us into groups. Theo and Madison were taken one way. I was sent with others down a different corridor. The walls were windowless. I tried to memorize the turns, but it was impossible. Every hallway looked identical. We were brought into what I can only call an interrogation chamber. White chair, one bulb, one camera. A woman in a grey coat entered, no name tag. "We need to ask you about what you saw," she said. I asked, "What is this place?" Her answer, "An erasure point. Nothing that enters Echo leaves unchanged." Chapter 6. The Memory Cleaners. She asked questions that felt too specific. What seat were you in? Who were you seated next to? What did you hear at 1:43 p.m.? I told her the truth, or tried. She stopped me often. "That's not what the others reported." She claimed inconsistencies. "Your timeline diverges from the median." I asked what she meant. She replied, "You're showing resistance to the correction sequence." That's when I realized this wasn't a debrief, it was a calibration. They weren't looking for truth. They were looking to match stories, to rewrite the memory of Flight 708 into something manageable. The woman then asked if I believed in systemic illusion reinforcement. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My hands were shaking. They gave us something to drink. I refused. Others didn't. I watched as people who'd been terrified minutes earlier now sat calmly, hands folded, as if this was a normal travel delay. The man who screamed about his deleted phone, smiling now, chatting with a guard. The teen live streamer, numb, silent, eyes glazed. They were being reset, their memories cleaned. Madison fought it. I could hear her voice echoing down the hall. "You can't erase what we recorded," Theo shouted too. Then silence, then doors slamming. My heart raced. I looked at the camera in the ceiling and whispered, "You can watch me, but you won't rewrite me." After hours, or days, I don't know, they released us. No one said what happened. No one mentioned the flight. We were placed back onto the same aircraft. But now it was pristine. No burns, no scratches, no missing panel, like it had never been touched. Sloan was gone. Madison and Theo were gone. I asked the flight attendant where they were. She smiled kindly. "I don't see those names on the manifest." I looked around. The passengers were silent, staring forward, programmed. Someone had pressed restart, and I was the only one who remembered the crash. As the plane took off from Echo Point, I looked out the window. This time, no static, just forest. But deep below, I saw something. 3 more planes, all grounded, all unmarked, and people walking in lines, the same way we did. Echo Point wasn't just for us. It was for anyone whose flight deviated from the narrative, anyone whose story couldn't be controlled. And that's when I made a choice. If they wanted silence, I would give them a voice. I began writing down everything, every word, every breath, because someone out there needs to know. Flight 708 existed. We were erased but not forgotten. We landed in Montreal as scheduled. At least that's what they told us. The airport looked normal, but nothing felt real. The jet bridge was already attached, the gate empty of staff or passengers. No welcome, no customs, no security, as if our arrival was meant to go unnoticed. The flight attendant who'd smiled at me before was now eerily blank, guiding people off like she'd never seen them before. As we walked into the terminal, everyone dispersed silently. No reunions, no tears, just passengers stepping into the void, like actors leaving a stage after a play no one was allowed to applaud. I waited near the baggage claim, hoping to see Madison or Theo. They never came. Then I noticed something worse. The monitors didn't show our flight. Flight 708 wasn't listed, arriving, delayed, or cancelled. I asked a staff member about it, and he checked twice, then said, "That flight number doesn't exist." I asked again, more urgently. He repeated, "No such flight landed today." My hands started to tremble. I turned to another passenger, a woman who'd sat 2 rows behind me. "What flight did we just take?" She stared at me, puzzled. "Toronto to Montreal, flight 312. I shook my head. "No, it was Calgary 708. Her face paled. I think you're mistaken." And just like that, she walked away. I tried calling Madison. Her number was gone from my phone, just Vanished. I looked in my email for the ticket confirmation. Also gone. It was like someone had surgically removed Flight 708 from every trace of my digital life. Even my boarding pass, which I'd saved for points, was now listed as invalid QR code. I visited the airline desk and asked to speak to someone about the flight. They pulled up my booking and said, "You never boarded a plane today. Your itinerary was cancelled yesterday afternoon." They showed me a screen. It was true, at least in their system, but I was here. My luggage was here. My memory, intact. That left only one explanation. The rewrite had failed. For me. A few days later, I visited a government aviation office. I gave them the tail number of the plane, CFNRX. The man behind the desk froze. That aircraft was retired from service 3 months ago. It's in storage in Thunder Bay. I demanded a supervisor. When she came out, she said gently, "Sir, I don't know where you got that number, but it's not in use. It hasn't flown since April." She smiled and walked me out. As I exited, I glanced back and saw her picking up the phone, whispering into it. Chapter 8. Disappearing from the system. The next morning, I found my apartment had been entered. Nothing was stolen, just changed. My files were reorganized. My laptop felt colder, as if it had been powered off and repacked. I booted it up. My backup folder was gone, the one with all my photos, emails, and notes from the trip. I ran recovery software. It was blocked. I tried connecting to a VPN server I'd used before. Denied. My name everywhere was slowly being sanitized. First my flight logs, then my calendar entries, then my cloud history. I began printing everything I could find. I wrote physical notes. I created a journal with timestamps. I wasn't just documenting a conspiracy. I was trying to preserve my own reality. I started visiting other passengers I remembered. Some answered the door, but acted confused. One man, an accountant from seat 32C, claimed he'd never flown to Montreal. I showed him a photo I'd secretly taken on the flight. He stared at it, shaking. "That's me. But I don't remember this. Who are you?" Another woman cried when I showed her the flight map I'd drawn. "I've been having nightmares about static," she whispered. "About voices that tell me to forget," but she refused to talk more. "They said if I spoke, I'd lose everything," she said. "My job, my kids, even my memories." Then she slammed the door. I began to understand. Not everyone had resisted the rewrite, but the trauma had fractured their silence. That's when the messages started. At first, they were subtle. My mail began arriving late. My electricity flickered. Then I received a letter with no return address. "Let it go. Echo Point never happened." Then another 2 days later. "This is your last warning. Flights vanish. So can you." I told myself not to panic. But when I heard static coming from my walls, like the signal tone from the plane, I knew they were already inside my world. I started hearing a low hum at night, like something alive behind the drywall. I didn't sleep, I barely ate. I watched the door for hours, but the fear only drove me deeper into the truth. And the truth had one final destination. I needed to find where they took Madison and Theo. I traced old NORAD facility records and black-budget airport grants. Most sites were gone, converted to farmland or demolished. But one remained off record, a radio station decommissioned in 1998 in northern Quebec. Its frequency, 27.134. The same number Sloan had whispered. I packed a bag, bought a burner phone, took a car. I didn't tell anyone. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about proof. If I didn't return, at least someone might find this journal. Because the world needs to know. What they did to us is only the beginning. It took 3 days to reach the coordinates. The drive north felt like a descent into isolation. Civilization peeled away in layers. Gas stations replaced by silent snowfields, Wi-Fi bars vanishing from my phone screen one by one. The road turned to gravel, then ice, then nothing at all. I parked the car where the trail ended and hiked the last few miles with only a compass and a gut instinct pulling me forward. Trees towered over me like guardians of secrets no one was supposed to find. Just when I thought I'd been wrong, I saw it. A rusted tower, leaning slightly, cloaked in snow and fog. It was real, exactly as described in the classified NORAD map, Site 27.134. The frequency facility that wasn't supposed to exist. The front gate was bent, hanging on one hinge, no lights, no signs. I stepped through and followed the path toward what once had been the control building. The structure was buried under snow, but the door had been recently cleared. Someone had been here. I pushed it open and stepped inside. Dust coated everything, but wires still hummed faintly under the floorboards. In the center of the room, a control panel with a cracked screen and a single glowing switch. I flipped it. The lights blinked to life, and with them, the humming grew louder. A low frequency, like the one from the plane, began to pulse through the walls, and then a voice, garbled, distant, weak, but unmistakably human. Echo point breach. Repeat. Memory divergence confirmed. I froze. The voice was familiar. "Madison?" I whispered. Then louder, "Madison, is that you?" No response. Just the same transmission, looping again. I searched the room and found a shortwave terminal still functional. I dialed the frequency back, trying to lock onto the source. The static cleared for 1 second, and I heard her scream. Then silence. It was like a dream, or a trap, or both. I had just confirmed something terrifying. The memory erasure didn't work on everyone. Some were left in limbo, half erased, half aware, trapped between silence and memory. Then I heard a door slam behind me. I turned quickly. No one was there. But I wasn't alone anymore. A movement in the reflection of a broken monitor. A figure. A man. Tall, dark jacket. Visor. Like the guards from Echo Point. He raised something in his hand. Not a gun, but a small blinking device. "You need to forget again," he said, stepping closer. I didn't move. "She's still alive," I told him, "and I'm going to expose all of it." He shook his head. "No one will believe you. We're not erasing you this time. We're replacing you." He pressed the device. A blinding white pulse exploded in the room. Then, darkness. I woke up in a hospital bed. Montreal General. A nurse smiled as I opened my eyes. "Welcome back," she said. "You were found unconscious in your apartment. Gas leak." I blinked, confused. I tried to speak. My throat was dry. "Flight 708, I managed. She hesitated, then smiled again. "There's no record of any Flight 708, sir. Just rest. You've had a fall," but I remembered. All of it. And when I checked my arm, I found it, carved faintly into my skin with something sharp. 27-134, find her. They tried again, the second wipe. But this time I had anchored myself, through physical memory, through notes I had hidden in the soles of my shoes, through names I had whispered into cassette tapes buried under floorboards. I knew this wasn't over. They had failed. I remembered everything, and now I wasn't running anymore. I was going to publish it. Everything. The passengers. The fake flight. The mind resets. The disappearing frequencies. I found a journalist. I told her my story. She didn't believe me at first. Then I played her the recording I'd salvaged. Her face changed. "Where did you get this?" she asked. "From a place that doesn't exist," I replied, "but we were there." The article went live 2 weeks later. Anonymous source, limited details, but enough. People started writing in. "I saw a plane like that once. I remember a flight no one else does. My son disappeared after being rerouted." The ripple became a wave. Aviation bloggers, radio hosts, even retired military. One thing kept appearing, Echo Point, always in whispers, always denied, always erased. But now people were asking questions they couldn't silence. A month later, I received a package with no return address. Inside, a flash drive, a single file, audio. I played it. It was her voice. Madison. If you're hearing this, they haven't found me yet, but they will. Keep going. Don't stop. Don't let them rewrite you. Then static. She was alive, and so was the story.